we have our second presenter with us. Sorry if I mispronounce your name, Zehra Gürsoy. Hello, and we are very, very happy to have you with us. You will present us the topic, use of corpus stylistics in literature classroom, a case study. The floor is yours. If you could briefly also introduce yourself for our listeners,
Of
it would be
course, of
great.
course.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. So let me just share my screen first. Let me do the proportions right. So right now you can see my screen, right? Is there any problem with it?
No, everything's okay. We can see your
Okay,
screen perfectly well.
okay, okay. Thank you then. So first of all, good evening, everyone. I'm Zehra Gürsoy, and I'm an MA student in Applied Linguistics and a research assistant at Karadeniz Technical University. I'm working at the English Language and Literature Department. And before I start my presentation, I'd like to thank Professor Çıraklı, dear Mustafa Zeki Hocam, for giving me this opportunity. And also, I'd like to thank you, Joanna and Ferit Hocam, for giving us this stage to present our ideas or experiences with everyone. So tonight I will talk about my experience with corpus stylistics in the literature classroom in my presentation titled Use of Corpus Stylistics in Literature Classroom, a Case Study. Since my research interests include corpus linguistics, first I'd like to start talking about the basic terms offered in our presentations like corpus, corpus linguistics, and corpus stylistics. And then I will continue with a classroom practice we had in Professor Çıraklı's class. So what is corpus? As stated in the first definition, it's not simply any body of text, but a finite-sized body of machine-readable text sampled in order to be maximally representative of the language variety under consideration. And in addition to McHenry and Wilson, Sinclair defines corpus as a collection of pieces of language text in electronic form selected according to external criteria to represent as far as possible a language or language variety as a source of data for linguistic research. What is corpus linguistics then? It is the study of language based on large collections of real-life languages stored in corpora, which are the computerized databases created for linguistic research. And those studies are also known as corpus-based studies. And moreover, some researchers acknowledge corpus as a method to obtain and analyze data quantitatively and qualitatively, while others consider it a theory of language. Corpus stylistics, on the other hand, to describe very briefly, it has found its way into popular usage to describe the kind of work that uses corpus tools in service of statistic analysis. In another saying, corpus stylistics research applies corpus methods to the analysis of literary texts, given particular emphasis to the relationship between linguistic description and literary appreciation. In corpus stylistic approach, the linguistic description can take innovative forms through the corpus methods that make it possible to investigate linguistic phenomena in new and quantitative ways. And in addition, it takes critical reading of a literary text to another dimension by presenting more organized data with comparable referential patterns. Corpus linguistics and corpus stylistics. So in order to highlight some features of both of corpus stylistics and corpus linguistics, in addition to providing quantitative data for linguistic categories, corpus linguistic research has also added new categories for the description of linguistic phenomena such as collocation, semantic prosody, keywords, or clusters, also called as n-grams. Therefore, the main advantage of employing corpus methods in the study of literary texts could be the fact that a degree of quantification can be achieved that is not easily possible in a manual analysis. Moreover, since the data collecting procedure is being completed by online tools, corpus stylistics may actually reduce intuition-based critiques and therefore arbitrariness and add systemacy to the whole research process. So what about corpus stylistics and literature classroom? and why corpus stylistics has a place in literature classrooms. Although students might have numerous study styles, stylistics can be used to teach literature or at least facilitate the study of literature or the study of linguistic creativity more broadly understood. And it can be used to teach language, language awareness, and language arts as a resource for language users. And it can be used to teach linguistics and in an inductive way into a sometimes demanding subject area, bottom up rather than top down investigation that teaches as much or prompts as many questions about language as it does about literature. Furthermore, as Çıraklı and Özbay in their forthcoming article suggests, literary appreciation and critical reading always require a solid ground to integrate the act of reading into the scientific study of language. Corpus linguistics provide the literature teachers with such a linguistic medium through which they can cultivate critical reading and linguistic awareness at a time. So corpus linguistics in literature classrooms, I will talk about my case from now on. I took a literature class from Professor Çıraklı in my second year of MA. During the class, week by week, we discussed different linguistic terms and literary texts. One week, we discussed corpus stylistics and its place in the literature classrooms. During the discussion, Professor Çıraklı showed us how to conduct a corpus stylistic analysis with a literary text. In his forthcoming article, again, the detailed version of the practice will be published. And for this presentation, I'm going to share my own experience and notes from the practice. To conduct the corpus stylistic analysis, an adapted version of Byber's classroom adaptation of the corpus approach is followed in Professor Çıraklı's literature classroom. For step 1, we didn't reduce the critical reading to the empirical findings. Step 2, corpus approach, as you know, primarily utilizes the already existing critical conventions and then consolidates its findings by employing corpus analysis. In step 4, corpus approach uses the extensive computational data to test, to confer, to question, and validate the critical judgments. And in step 4, corpus approach uses a top-down process from qualitative analysis to the quantitative. So in our case, again, we did the practice about characterization in The Merchant of Venice on a Shakespeare's play. The selection of the text process. For our project, we decided to study Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice play. As you see in the table, it is reasonably short play in length and was quite popular among us students. And moreover, as instructed, we analyzed Shylock's characterization in the play because of his questionable character in the play. Before the analysis procedure, Professor Çıraklı did a warming-up session to find out about how do we feel about Shylock. While most of us thought that he is a tragic character, some of us saw him as a tragicomic character. And I was on the tragic character side of this debate and felt sympathy towards him. And since the study followed up a top-down procedure to increase awareness of the language in characterization within this context, Professor Çıraklı gave us corpus materials in accordance with our perceptions on the character. Then during the process, we re-evaluated our perspectives of the character, taking into consideration the corpus data we received and interpreted the concordances and discordances between the words used by the character and his personality traits. As I mentioned, first we interpreted Shylock's use of adjectives because adjectives are used to modify the character's personality traits and tell us about the speakers themselves, the addressee, or the non-present characters. And since the very discourse reveals the character, we don't only learn about their external features, but also their intellectual and psychological depths through their attitudes. And our findings showed that Shylock doesn't use any adjectives to describe himself. A lower number of denote adjectives indicate a positive sense, and most of the adjectives are negative. And more importantly, when we compare the quantitative data with its context, it appears that the quantitative data, actually doesn't match with its concordances. What I will mean by that is here. Actually, it was something surprising for me because although adjectives have positive prosody in this, as you see in this table, these adjectives are used mostly as a quantifier or for pragmatic purposes. So Shylock uses positive adjectives, but they are used as a quantifier or for pragmatic purposes. It was surprising for me because intuitively, when I saw the data, the first thought came to my mind was that Shylock used quite positive adjectives, which could mean that he has a positive attitude in the play. However, the case was the opposite with his language use. Therefore, quantitative only data for a literary text might be misleading, was my outcome from the first part of the analysis. And in the case of negative adjectives, Shylock uses them as if others refer to him or uses them for others. In other words, negative adjectives reveal the others from Shylock's perspective or reveal Shylock from others' perspective, in which case he uses them ironically or sarcastically. And Shylock therefore hardly refers to himself by using adjectives. And since I think he's a tragic character, those findings matched my expectations and was convenient with my data reading. So as a conclusion for our practice, this small-scale study enabled us to test our comments according to the corpus data. We used a top-down strategy to examine the critical influence of the quantitative data on the students' critical responses to Shylock as a character, and the Corpus Stylistics analysis enabled our involvement and curiosity, helping us incorporate quantitative and qualitative data within the framework of critical reading. And as final source, I can come up with these conclusions with the help of dear Professor Çıraklı. Corpus Stylistics in literature classrooms helps us in this way. With the systematic data we collect, it raises linguistic awareness of the students because we see the data, then we interpret on it. So we see the linguistic awareness, we see the linguistic way how the language is used. And it also eliminates the intuitiveness because as I mentioned, my experience, when I first read the text, let's say, I thought that he was a tragic character and he was sad or something like that. But then when we do the analyzing, we found out that he actually was not that sympathetic character or had any goodness in him. Anyway, so, and in language classrooms, we can use corpus stylistics so that it would raise the awareness of language use of the students. So those were my observations from my classroom and my experiences. Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening to me. So if you have any questions,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your thought-provoking presentation. Indeed, corpora and linguistics and literature, it's a great tool to research, to conduct research for sure. I guess before I will start with my question that I would like to ask you, there is also a question on the chat from one of our participants. If you could, how can we reach the article you mentioned? I guess you mentioned the article. There is some.
I was trying to see the. Can I stop sharing or should I?
Yeah, you can. You can stop here.
Sorry. Okay, so let me read the question. how can we reach the article you mentioned? I guess it was
yeah,
Gürsoy.
that's the question.
Oh,
If you could refer to this question. Yeah.
Okay, so actually it's a forthcoming article that will be published at the end of this year, I guess, right? Mustafa Zeki Hocam, am I correct? I used his article for this.
Article that will be published within a few months, and Dr. Özbay and I wrote the article, and Zehra, you highlighted, but can I add something, or can I, repeat a point that Zehra also made?
Sure, Hocam, of course.
Here, on the one hand, we try to have a touch with the responses of the students, but on the other hand, we should keep in mind that there is also a linguistic aspect of the literature. So Corpus Stylistics provide us with another, another aspect of the literary work. So it is also mere linguistic material. So the student readers are also asked to have a touch with such palpable linguistic material. So I think that they are Corpus Stylistics applications in the literature classroom and also interactive activities. They are complementary with each other.
Yes, exactly. So thank you for the add-up, Mustafa Zeki Hocam.
Thank you very much. And we have another question. Is Corpus Stylistic applicable for the primary students? If you could answer this question.
Well, actually, in order to use Corpus Stylistics, you need to be able to use the Corpus tools that exist online, or maybe softwares that you can find from internet. So if your students can actually use those tools, maybe it can be applicable to the primary students, because actually it also depends on your texts too. I mean, if it is appropriate for your students and they can use Corpus tools, then of course, I think you can use Corpus Stylistics for primary students.
Thank you very much for that question. Farid, do you have any question?
So actually, I have just a question, a technical question, I might say. Thank you so much for this presentation. It was very informative. Which corpus? I think somebody asked that question.
Yes.
So while analyzing those literary texts, I think you used an online or a piece of software to analyze those. So which one did you use? Okay.
Well, I am personally.
Yeah.
Well, I am personally used to use Sketch Engine. It's an online website that you can use for your corpus text or corpus analysis, let's say. So it is very easy to use, actually, and I think you would benefit from it. So Sketch Engine, and if not, maybe you can download Linguistics. It is also another software that you can download from the internet. It is also Corpus software. So I think most of the Corpus tools are very easy to use. So if you can maybe just spend a few hours on them, you would use them very easily. So I can just write down the name.
Please type it if you don't mind.
Of course. I am typing. So those two tools are the ones that I use the most. And as I said, Sketch Engine is an online website. It requires an membership, I guess, but it's free for 30 days or so. So maybe you can use them.
So I've added another one, if they want to use a software.
Uncon, of course.
Yes.
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, okay. So we have various tools to use for our corpus analysis. Yes.
Thank you very much. I have my final question, if I may.
So Joanna, sorry. So if people are interested in, why not having a webinar on how to use the basic things? This might be very very useful for some audience, honestly speaking. Yeah, Sketch Engine and the other tools, of course. We might think of that. I didn't suggest a suggestion. We have Ali Şükrü. We have Ali Şükrü.
Yeah, I mean, yes, Ali Şükrü Hocam is here, so I'm kind of.
Yeah, so Greta.
He's my supervisor, by the way, for those who don't know him.
Yeah, but it would be something like this, because sometimes I attend those webinars and seminars. So Ali Şükrü Hocam says no permission. Okay, so
Hocam, actually, he's not a co-host. That's why I guess he said no permission.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought that not allowing us to do so. I'm sorry for that. Misunderstanding. Yeah, most of the time, when I attend those webinars, they just introduce the tool, the basic, what to do with that, button, etc., or with that settings. But most of the time, they do not, provide practice. I mean, before conducting that kind of webinar or seminar, actually, we can provide some sample text to the audience, and we can ask them to keep those tools ready. And then, we can do some kind of practice. Yeah, why not? Yes, we might consider that. Yeah.
Actually,
yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Ali Şükrü Hocam, yes, you can. Now you can turn on your microphone. Sorry for that.
Dear Hocam, many warm thanks for mentioning my name in this lovely presentation.
Yes.
With Zeki Hocam, with Joanna, and with other distinguished, respected participants, Zehra. Many warm thanks. Mustafa, Zeki Hocam, and Zehra have told everything about corpus, how we can integrate corpus into stylistic issues here. Mustafa Hocam is an expert in this issue here. So it is
not really, and I have some reservations about the use of corpus stylistics for the primary level, or
really?
Yes.
Sorry.
I have some reservations, but Ali Şükrü Hoca is the expert of corpus, but corpus statistics, we have some publications together.
And we will consider your reservations seriously enough. No worry about it. Don't worry, Hocam. Your reservations always.
Is that we have also made our special interaction. It is also important. But what is interesting is that there are some of the colleagues who are interested in theory, and the text, the literary text itself, I mean, as a book, it is also a space. So it covers, the interaction between the student reader and the material text. Another, not problem, but another issue that we should consider is that nowadays our young generations are accustomed to using tablets and screens and screen reading. We should also consider how we can apply these issues to virtual, spatial interaction. We should reconsider all these issues in terms of learning. But corpus stylistics is important. Why? Because the students again can have a possibility of encounter with the linguistic tissue, palpable linguistic tissue, and quantitative aspect of the text.
I'm really sorry for interrupting. I'm really sorry for that, but we have to move on to the next presenter, and Ali Şükrü Hocam. So maybe we can have you again. Yes, we might have you again in another webinar. Really
sure, why not? Thanks again. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Zehra, let's start the next presentation. Thank you very much once again for your lovely presentation, very informative.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so now we have our next presenter.